and then a smaller rocket-powered aircraft attached underneath. And in just minutes, we expect that smaller ship, the VSS, or Virgin Spaceship Unity, to separate and then blast off to an altitude of about 50 miles above the Earth. And that would be just high enough for the three-person crew and the three private passengers to be weightless for a few minutes before then returning to Earth in a glide plane, essentially. Now, this marks another milestone in space tourism. The tourists on board, two are a mother-daughter duo from Antigua and Barbuda. 46-year-old Keisha Schaff is a health and wellness coach, and 18-year-old Anastasia Mayers won their seats in a charity raffle. And the third is 80-year-old John Goodwin. He's a former Olympic canoeist he will be the first Olympian and one of the oldest people ever to travel into space. Goodwin will also has Parkinson's disease and says he hopes his trip will inspire others. Actually, he bought his ticket for about, listen to this, $250,000 way back in 2005. Since then, by the way, tickets have just gotten more expensive. Now, their whole trip will take about 30 to 45 minutes or so from separation to touchdown. And the Spaceship Unity last went to space in late June. NBC's Gadi Schwartz is in New Mexico covering all of this for us. Gadi, talk to us about what you're seeing. What's the mood like on the ground?
Well, what we're seeing right now is a bunch of people over here at the spaceport straining up in the sky, trying to get a glimpse of Eve, that mothership, which is about 35,000 feet up right now. Fortunately, Tom, I've got a little toy here, so let me just demonstrate what's about to happen. We've got Eve, this is the mothership, and then this is the VSS Unity that we were just talking about. So in just a few minutes, Eve and Unity, they are going to separate like this. Then Eve is going to peel off, and then Unity is going to get ready to light this thruster back here, this rocket pushing about 70,000 pounds of thrust, and that's when Unity just goes sky high. It goes, climbs. We're hoping to hear a sonic boom out here because it's going to go past Mach 1, past Mach 2, a little past Mach 3 as it goes up into space, and then we see Unity, or at least we hope to see Unity from the cameras that are back down here on Earth, go like this. It is going to invert, and at that point, everybody inside of Unity will be able to unbuckle. They will be in zero gravity, and they will be able to float over to whichever window they want and peer down or up at Earth, depending on their orientation, because down and up, once you get into space, it kind of loses the normal reference that we see. And then they will use these little thrusters to bring the Unity back to this orientation, and that's when you see these little booms on the end. This doesn't actuate, but what you're going to see is these go up like this, and then it falls, because what they want to do is they want to make sure that when this spacecraft re-enters the atmosphere, it's not coming down like a lawn dart, it's coming down like this, almost like a reverse parachute, where the shielding takes the brunt of the atmosphere, slows it down, and then this squat little spacecraft becomes a glider. These tail booms, they go back into place, and then it glides all the way down to right here and landing back at the Spaceport America, which is where we are all going to be waiting for them. All of that is set to take place in the next hour. Tom?
You know, Gadi, not unlike the space shuttle in terms of its return glide path, right? The space shuttle glided back to a landing at the Kennedy Space Center, usually. And this is similar. And in fact, on the mission back in 2021, I was there in the New Mexico desert. Richard Branson was on board. They had a problem on the return. They were hit by heavy winds aloft, and as a result, they missed their glide path, and they came out of the FAA-approved glide slope and the flight path.
Tom, you know, we say glide, and then you look at this thing in person, and you're like, wait a minute, I know what gliders are. Gliders have huge wings. This thing is so squat, and you're right. Yeah. The delta formation here reminds you of those space shuttles, and when it comes to wind, they say that they have all the forecasts modeled. They've been working on that ever since, and so they think that they have this down to an exact science, but that delta, this Delta aircraft will come down. And interestingly enough, we were just talking about the shuttle. This is the only re-entry vehicle right now that's doing this type of approach. But just a ways down, Alamogordo and White Sands, they did see a shuttle that landed there once. It was, I believe, the normal runway was flooded out east, and so they had to divert here to New Mexico, and they landed over at White Sands. So this is an area that has a lot of open spaces, but again, all the modeling that's gone into the flight plan today is something that they've been preparing for quite some time. The pilots that we've been speaking to, they've been simulating, and they've actually flown those models today in the simulator with the exact same wind speeds that they think that they're going to have today. And so far, everything's a go. Tom?
Well, listen, we should follow up and just make the point that after they had that problem with the re-entry 2 years ago, the FAA actually grounded the Virgin Galactic fleet for a time as they did a full analysis on what exactly happened and what went wrong. This is a stunning moment for Virgin Galactic's Richard Branson, the CEO. It's his dream that he was working on for years. I spoke with him about his dream back in 2021. Take a listen.
This is your baby. I mean, you have spent 17 years, and now it's coming true.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a pinch yourself moment. I always envisioned as a kid that a spaceship should look like this.
Yeah, you did. You envisioned this when you were a kid.
I just thought that's how you should fly to space, not in a rocket, going off from the ground. And you should be able to go to space and come back to space like this.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would be able to design something quite like that.
Richard Branson, there standing in front of his spaceship 2 years ago in New Mexico. I said to him, it looks like a lot of fun. Maybe I could join you. And he said, why not? Just crawl on board. You could be a stowaway. He said, I always wanted to be a stowaway. Let's talk to Eileen Collins right now. She's a retired NASA astronaut, commander of a space shuttle. She wrote the book Through the Glass Ceiling to the Stars, the story of the first American woman to command a space mission. Boys, nice to see you, Eileen. Thanks so much for joining us. I got to say, it makes me a little uncomfortable to refer to these folks who are going to be going up there for a quick bounce into space as astronauts. To me, you're the astronaut. You spent decades working on that resume. This is really about space tourism, right? And what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. There are professional astronauts like myself who spend, the vast majority of our professional life training to go to space. We know how to operate the spacecraft. That's our career field. But then you have people that pay to go up, or maybe they win a ticket to go up on one flight. One of the marketing, I want to say, techniques of these companies is you can call yourself an astronaut if you go over 50 miles. Well, that's a little bit stretch of the term astronaut. I'm okay if they want to call themselves astronauts because, frankly, I think the general public understands the difference between a professional astronaut and a one-time flyer. But keep in mind, some of these people aren't just tourists. Some of them actually do experiments, and they actually have like an agenda and a schedule and things that they want to do. So there is, I want to say, that professional aspect to it. But I'm not too worried about what they call themselves. I just think people are smart enough to know the difference between a professional astronaut and a one-time flyer. So someone needs to come up with a new term to call these people. So that's a challenge out there. What's a new term to say one-time flyer?
And is it important? Do you think that there, a lot of these Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they all think it's important to, in their words, kind of democratize space, make it accessible to everybody, give everybody the chance to see the Earth from the altitude you've seen it at when you were on board the space station. Do you agree with that? Is there value in allowing all of us to have the same experience?
Well, I do think there is value in it, yes, and I do agree with them. I don't know if we're going to get every person up in space. That just doesn't sound realistic. But for people that really want to go, now there's many people I talk to say, I would never do that. I would never, don't ever send me to space. But there's some people that have a dream to go there. And I think the goal would be for those that have the dream and that really want to, that they someday will have the opportunity. So maybe today, if you're in your 20s or 30s, you don't have the money to do it. Well, maybe in 10, 20, 30 years, there'll be so much flying and the cost will come down to the point that you may be able to afford it and you may be able to have that wonderful opportunity. You know, having been in space myself, I think space tourism is going to be hugely successful because the human experience of being in microgravity, floating, looking back at the Earth from space, is such a wonderful human feeling. And I think that you really want to take care of the Earth when you look at it from a distance and you can see, you can see the stars at noon. You can see the curvature of the horizon. The planet really is round. The Earth is not flat. I think when you have that experience, it makes you want to really care for the Earth more. So I really support what these CEOs, and we say billionaires, but I support what they're doing. I think it's very important, and I think I'm very happy, and I hope for the best of success.
Commander Eileen Collins, do not go anywhere, please. We need your expertise. And by the way, Commander Collins was in charge of the return to space mission back in 2005 and brought that Discovery up to the space station. Let's bring in Tariq Malik, who is the editor-in-chief of Space.com. He joins us now. Tariq, can you talk a little bit about the safety concerns that they've had here with regards to specifically to Virgin Galactic following they had a fatal accident in 2014 and then 2 years ago when they violated the return FAA flight path?
Yeah, Tom, you know, it's been a really long road for Virgin Galactic and their Spaceship Two vehicle, which we see the folks on Unity today. You know, during the development of the spacecraft itself, they did have a...
Tariq? But hang on one second. I just want to tell the viewer, you are watching now the view from inside the Virgin Galactic spaceship. So those are the passengers who are inside and waiting to essentially rocket, for them to light the rocket underneath that, underneath the plane, pardon me, the plane, and then fire off towards their very low space. It's not an orbit, but let's just say, you know, just above the Kármán line, or just below the Kármán line, I should say, at 50 miles up. Tariq, go ahead. What are your thoughts about the safety record of Virgin Galactic?
You know, I think they've had their own version of the trials and tribulations that we've seen big space agencies have over time about how difficult it is to fly in space. They had not just a fatal accident in 2014 in which a pilot died, another was gravely injured, blamed a pilot error, and they had to revamp all of their training and safety systems to make sure it couldn't happen. But then they had to enhance their communications with officials, with the FAA, after that 2021 flight, that first flight, because they deviated from the airspace that they were allowed to be in on return, and they had to make sure that they kind of get those safety communications in line with what the FAA needs for safe passenger flight. A lot of growing pains. They even had a fatal accident on the ground with their developer, just in the original designing of this vehicle. I would say it's a lot safer now because of those issues. They're very confident enough that this is their first ticketed paying passenger flight. They had a research flight earlier this year, and the goal for them, of course, is to ramp up this commercial flight so that they can get a wider variety of passengers and participants.
Hey, do we still have Gadi on the ground? Gadi, give us an update. How close are we to actually seeing Unity drop from the space plane?
It looks like we're about 10 minutes away. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but it looks like right now we're about 10 minutes away from the drop, from that point where Eve will separate from Unity, and then Unity will head straight up into space. So a lot of people are watching the streams. The live stream here from Virgin Galactic just started as well. And then there you have that live look inside. You've got those passengers sitting there. Just talking a little bit about the crew, you've got Keisha and you've got Anna that you're looking at right there. We were talking to Keisha a little bit earlier, and she said one of the best experiences for her that she's looking forward to is to look down at our beautiful planet and then look across at her beautiful daughter taking in that same view. So that's something that we're hoping to see here in just a little bit. And talking about those tickets, we talked a little bit about how John Goodwin, he's been waiting about 18 years. He bought one of the first tickets at about $250,000 way back in the day before they were where they're at now. But Keisha, she was sitting in a plane. She was sitting on a Virgin plane making a flight when she saw an ad pop up for sweepstakes. to fly to space. So she took a little moment to fill out that form and didn't think anything of it. Well, lo and behold, the next thing she knew, Sir Richard Branson was at her door telling her that she had won a ticket to space. And not only did she win one ticket to space, she won 2 tickets to space. So at that moment, she FaceTimes Anna that you see right there. I believe it's behind her. And the next thing you know, they are now on their way to 53, 54 miles above the Earth. Tom?
You are a native New Mexican, and I'm wondering, you know that area well. Is it hot as heck right now? What's it like on the ground?
Yeah, it's very hot. And actually, it's funny that you say native New Mexican. I was a student at NMSU in 2004, and I remember they had this thing called the X Prize Cup. And one of my journalism assignments was to go out to the airport and see the X Prize Cup. And back then it was Spaceship One, very similar to this design. And, you know, you and I are both space buffs, so I was kind of a rocket guy. And I saw this design and I was like, no way is this ever going to fly. It had won the space, the X Prize Cup at that time. And I remember getting video of it, us having these debates. Is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? I can't describe what it was like a few days ago going in that hangar and seeing the Unity right there in front of me attached to Eve. It was this kind of full circle moment where you're like, oh, wait, actually, like, we're kind of living in the future here. And it made me think of that day back there in 2004 for the first time when I saw this design. But again, it's a very ambitious design and one that they're hoping will gracefully return back here to Earth. But it looks like from the reaction of the people, we've got about 5 or 6 minutes before there's that separation from Eve and before we start to see Unity climb into space.
Perfect. Gadi, don't go anywhere. Of course, you're not going to go anywhere, but hang on. Hang on, because we want to ask you a few more questions here. But let's bring in Clayton Anderson. He's the author and retired NASA astronaut. He has some great perspective here as well. Clayton, same thing to you. Are we really watching and witnessing this whole new age in space exploration or space enthusiasm when you're allowing just everybody to go into space if they can afford it? Now, this is obviously a luxury life experience for those who pay the ticket.
I think it's great that we're giving people the opportunity in this manner. You know, I would caution that the word space for everyone right now. It's not.
Clayton, I think we've got a bad Zoom connection. I can't hear you, and I think you're cutting in and out. Let's try to reestablish that. Let's instead go to, if we could, Jana Levin, is a professor of physics and astronomy at Barnard College. And I'm just wondering, Professor, your thoughts about the when you look at all the models here, we got the SpaceX model, which is essentially a rocket that goes straight up, traditional rocket. You got the same thing with Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, same thing. But the Virgin Galactic model is different, as Gadi's explained, in terms of using the space plane, if you will.
Yeah, the attempt is really to do something suborbital, meaning these spacecraft can't do a full orbit around the Earth. What they're really doing is going up high enough to break out of the Earth's atmosphere. And I just want to remind everybody, we are in space. You know, the Earth is in space, floats in space. So what they're really trying to do is get further out so that they're breaking out of the Earth's atmosphere. But they never break away from the Earth's gravitational pull. And so instead of orbiting, eventually they start to fall back to Earth. And what the astronauts, or the space tourists, I guess, are really experiencing is the weightlessness of just falling. I mean, you can do that on Earth. You can cut a cable in an elevator and you'll be in free fall and you will experience weightlessness. So what they're really trying to do is have that experience, but have it further out and hopefully with a nice, smooth, gliding ending, as you've said.
Yeah, I've had that experience in the zero-G plane, so it's similar, but we should make the point, they're not going into orbit. They literally are kind of doing a quick bounce up into space, and then they come back down again. I've equated it almost to a trampoline bounce.
Yeah, and they've been doing these kinds of parabolic flights in the Earth's atmosphere for many decades, where artists have gone up, experimenters have gone up, performers, dancers have gone up in these flights, and they are parabolic. They literally follow a parabola and fall back towards Earth before starting the engines again and scooping the passengers safely to a landing. So this idea of being weightless is also true of people in the International Space Station. They're not so far out that they don't feel the Earth's gravity. They absolutely do, but they're just falling all the time, and they're falling in such a way that they can execute a full orbit. So they have a prolonged experience of weightlessness, as opposed to the few minutes that these space tourists will experience.
All right. Hey, Tariq Malik, let's bring you back into this. And I'm just wondering now, you are the consummate space reporter. Tariq covers the ins and outs of this industry like nobody else. And we're always comparing geek notes when we're at the Kennedy Space Center together. And I'm just wondering, Tariq, you know, what is the reputation within the space community right now of Virgin Galactic? They've had a rough couple of years, as you and I discussed. They were grounded for a while. They did have a fatality about 8-9 years ago. How are they kind of ranked and rated compared to what Elon Musk has done with SpaceX and what Jeff Bezos has done with Blue Origin? And is that even a fair comparison?
Well, Tom, those are kind words. Thank you so much. But you make a really great point that Virgin Galactic really, when you stack it up to their private spaceflight competitors, seems to have started off really strong earlier than many others. Back in 2004 with that announcement, they were hoping to fly in 2007. Then they had a lot of development setbacks, a lot of hurdles. And then here we are now in 2023 with their first actual space tourist flight, although they've had, of course, many other test flights and a research flight in the past. It does seem like they're building momentum, but they still have a long way to go. They've got a second spaceship ready to go to ramp up that scale, but they've actually really, in a recent earnings call, have said that, you know, people should not look for a lot of a big influx from these flights because they had to raise prices, and the people they're flying now are at that lower $200,000 rate, whereas now they're at $450,000. SpaceX, meanwhile, flying tourists into orbit, have booked flights around the moon on a brand new spacecraft. This is very different than that. I think their closest competitor is Blue Origin, which has its own issues. They did lose a vehicle recently. They're building back to return their own system to flight, but they have flown a few more passenger flights than Virgin Galactic. So I think that they still both have their own challenges, and seeing both vehicles ramp up will give us a really good picture of how robust this commercial space, suborbital space tourism market will actually be. Both companies have backlogs. Virgin Galactic has a very big, extensive 800-person backlog of customers to fly. Once they get through that and reopen reservations at their higher $450,000 price, I think they'll be able to see what their road to financial success would be.
Well, I think you just made a very important point. You're right. They're now charging, they went from $250,000 a flight to $450,000 a flight, and they've got 800 people, they claim, as of last December, who are on the list to go. So there clearly is a market, but it's not for the typical average middle-class American.
Exactly, you know, and this was always a market, at least at the beginning, for the wealthy, the super rich. Those orbital flights for the first space tourists to the International Space Station, they paid tens of millions of dollars. It's most likely more than that now, especially when you have folks like Jared Isaacman buying out full SpaceX rockets into orbit. So that's, you know, tens of millions times several. Virgin Galactic, meanwhile, has to get through that backlog. And the first ticket prices, Tom, were $200,000. So they're flying folks at that lower rate until they get to this higher $450,000 to try to make that profit over time. And they're also trying to build a new class of vehicle, the Delta class of these Spaceship Twos, that should be more affordable and more reliable to fly.
For me, this is
I'll tell you what, let's dip in, if we can, to some of the coverage here from Virgin Galactic Mission Control and listen to what they say as we're getting closer now to Unity dropping from the mothership Eve to then light the rocket. And let's make the point again that Unity is the spaceship that will go up there, and Eve is the mothership named after Richard Branson's mother, actually, in honor of her.
As you just mentioned, that release point, right after that, the crew lights the rocket motor, and Unity's trajectory to space starts in that horizontal release position before turning towards space, a maneuver that we refer to as the gamma turn. And then the rest of the rocket motor burn occurs in the vertical. We're now 2 minutes out from release.
The rocket motor boost was one of my favorite parts of the flight. Seeing the Earth drop away and seeing space come into view is just absolutely exciting. And of course, our vehicle gives our customers the best view of Earth with the amount of windows we have.
Yes. So we are go for release on time. That's about 1:40 from now. As you mentioned, that view from Earth, when the rocket motor burn is completed, the pilots will command the ship to feather. That's rotating the tail and the aft section of the wing up to about 60 degrees. And that starts a backflip maneuver for our spaceship, and it orients the vehicle such that all of those windows overhead are providing just a fantastic view for everyone on board to be able to look down at the Earth below. All right, so we're about 1:10 away from release at this point, 1 minute.
And I can see the crowds in Antigua, and they're excited. I can see the crowds here at Spaceport America getting ready to cheer our crew on their ascent.
You are listening to the voice of Virgin Galactic's mission control and the narrators, because they have the front row seat, sitting there watching all of this happen live, and they can count us down to the actual moment that we see Unity drop from Eve.
And that allows, once we get to the designated point in our flight profile, for the mothership pilots to engage the release and set Unity free. We're now 30 seconds away from release. The very last preparation that the pilots in spaceship do before release is they push that control stick all the way forward, ensuring that we have a perfect separation. We're 15 seconds. 10. 5, 3, 2, 1, release, release, release. Ignition. Good control. There's Mach 1. The pilots have started trimming for that turn towards space. Trim is now set. There is max Q. That's the point of maximum pressure exerted on the vehicle by the atmosphere. Those on board are experiencing about 3 Gs right now and traveling over 1,000 miles an hour.
That's incredible. I can imagine they're having quite a great time.
We're at Mach 2. We're in the vertical, headed towards space.
This is the part where they're seeing Earth move away and seeing space come into view and seeing that they're going to space, and just, it is an incredible feeling.
So we've got about Mach 2.8, Mach 3 approximately, and rocket motor cutoff.
Amazing. The crowds here are just absolutely going wild. I can't imagine what's happening in Antigua with them cheering them on. That's incredible. Awesome. Go Keisha, go Anna, go John.
So everybody on board has been cleared to unstrap and enjoy that zero-G experience. The pilots have unlocked the feather. That's the preparation so that they can raise the feather here momentarily. They're engaging the RCS as well. The feather is now starting to move on its way up. Everyone's up out of their seats, just
it's incredible. They're all, I know, it's amazing. They're all going to the window and taking in this just absolutely incredible view of Earth, the planet where all of their experiences are held. Everything they've ever known is down below.
The feather is all the way up. We have a predicted apogee of about 289,000 feet.
That is amazing. Our crew looks like they're having an absolutely incredible time, and they are officially astronauts. Welcome to space. Woo. Congratulations to John, to Keisha, to Anna on becoming astronauts today, and a special congratulations to our Unity pilot, Kelly, for her first space flight. And welcome back to space, CJ and Beth.
And the vehicle is oriented in that backflip or that upside down maneuver from our perspective, and you can see them just enjoying that view of the Earth below.
Man, it's just incredible. I can see that they just can't take their eyes away, and it's hard for us to describe. We can obviously see they're having just an incredible time in space, taking in the views, but it's an experience. It's the silence. It's the views. It's seeing our brilliant planet against the matte black of space. I can't imagine. I can't imagine I can't imagine what they're going through right now, and I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, well, we just achieved.
Again, we're listening to the voice of Virgin Galactic Mission Control. But let's bring in Commander Eileen Collins, and let's also bring in Clayton Anderson, two veteran NASA astronauts. Folks, what's it like to really experience that for the first time? Clayton, we'll start with you because we missed you the last time.
It's just, and we take a moment.
Well, thanks, Tom. Microgravity and being weightless in space is an amazing experience. I know if I were them, I would be excited about doing it, but I would be longing for a much longer time period. Right? They're going to get a taste of it. Once you have that taste, time in microgravity that they're going to get the opportunity to do. So, kudos to them. Congratulations to Virgin Galactic.
Just made the return to seat call.
Commander Eileen Collins, you've spent many days on orbit, and I'm just wondering, what was the first time like for you? What did you experience? Was it just a total rush that almost was an out-of-body experience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm going to answer that, but first of all, I want to say kudos to the commander, who no one mentions his name, but it is C.J. Sturckow, former shuttle astronaut and commander who's flying the Spaceship Two right now. C.J. Sturckow, he's also a former Marine and a former office mate of mine. Flew the shuttle 4 times, so I'm really proud of what he's doing. But my first experience in space was very clumsy. I unstrapped from my seat, I got out, and I immediately hit the other seat, and then I hit a panel of switches, and then I hit the ceiling, I hit the floor. You need to get used. It's like learning how to skateboard or learning how to roller skate for the first time. It's a skill you need to learn.
You mentioned the commander is C.J. Sturckow, and of course the pilot is Kelly Latimer. So we do want to make sure we mention them as well. And then I'm just wondering, by the way, they're now back in their seats and they're now going to begin the reentry process. Eileen, being a former shuttle commander, this is a unique vehicle to come back in on a glide slope, right? Talk to us about the challenges here.
Well, I do want to say, the difference between this flight and the Blue Origin flights are that Virgin Galactic is piloted. So it's actually flown back by the pilots, whereas the Blue Origin is fully automated. They have no pilots. So I think that probably with Virgin Galactic maybe makes the passengers feel a little more secure that they have 2 highly trained test pilots up front that know what they're doing. The pilots need to stay in a very small piece of airspace, so that's one of their concerns. But more important than that is that they stay within a flight envelope, which is mainly their dynamic pressure, their airspeed, their altitude, to keep the flight safe. And of course, they're gliding back without an engine, so they're using their speed brakes to control their energy and hit the landing spot, similar to what we did in the shuttle.
But they've got a unique wing configuration where they literally have to feather the wings back, and they have to do it at exactly the right moment, because if they mess that up, if they miss the timing, that can be catastrophic. And it was back in 2014 when they lost a test pilot.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, we lost, the country lost Michael Alsbury. That was on October 31st of 2014. He feathered the control surfaces a little too early, and so it was determined that it was pilot error. And as Tariq had mentioned earlier, there are fixes that went in to prevent that from happening again. And I can tell you the pilots, I am sure they are very, very well trained, because they are on board themselves, and they want to make sure that they get that landing back there safe and that everybody comes back safe. So I have a lot of confidence. I also know Kelly Latimer. She attended the Air Force Test Pilot School shortly after me. Highly professional person, and they're in very good hands with CJ and Kelly.
It's always amazing. Everybody within your astronaut corps seems to know each other. Is Gadi Schwartz, is he available on the ground there? Not yet. Okay. Gadi's just taking it all in on the ground. Clayton, and I'm wondering your thoughts as well as you watch this next generation of space tourists returning from this experience.
It's really cool that C.J. Sturckow, as Eileen mentioned, and hello to Eileen, another favorite of mine. But he took me planet way back in 2007. So they are in very, very good hands with CJ and Kelly at the control. This is a part that's a little sedate,
fragile, beautiful, finite planet.
but I think they're going to have a great time. The rush that they're feeling is going to be incredible. So landing is bittersweet because they were having such fun in space, but what a great experience and what a good start for Virgin Galactic.
Perfect. Clayton Anderson, thank you very much. Good perspective there. Let's just tune back in and listen in again to Virgin Galactic Mission Control and their conversation as now we watch these 3 space tourists return with the 3 crew members from the Unity spaceship.
What impact do you hope that they'll have upon return to Earth?
Yeah, so we've sent 2 people to space so far. Of course, we're so grateful for this partnership with Virgin Galactic to send Keisha to space, and then more soon. That no announcements yet, though. And so in terms of the impact that we hope that they have, I would say that it's different depending on the person. And we can't predict what that is. But what we're looking for is people who are committed to making a difference in their communities, people who have a track record of success, people who have a track record of doing things that make a difference in the world, people who are natural leaders. And so the hope is that each of them come back
Let's
down.
go ahead and bring in Gadi Schwartz. Gadi's on the ground there in New Mexico. And I'm wondering, did you hear the sonic boom, Gadi?
I heard the second boom on re-entry, so I believe, and I'm not a physicist, but there was one sonic boom going up, and then on re-entry, from what I understand, there's 2 sonic booms. Some people say they heard both. I heard one, and Tom, I can see the white speck back on approach. Right now, it's hovering around this lake in New Mexico called Elephant Butte, making its way back over here. But look, I don't know if I'm caught up in the emotion of the family behind us, but like, humans did a thing again. The idea that we humans have built technology that sends an 18-year-old and an 80-year-old up into space in this tiny capsule, and then they're able to float in 0 gravity with a thruster that pushes them 3 times the speed of sound. And this is the time that we live in, a time where it has never been more likely that just a normal person at home could go to space. It's awe-inspiring. So we're waiting for the Unity to do a circle. They're losing velocity right now, and it's all about making that glider slow down as much as possible upon approach, and then we will see that glider come down. Tom, this is the quirkiest part of this design. As the Unity comes down, there are 2 landing wheels that are going to come down. The landing gear comes down right here. So the wheels touch down, and then there's a landing skid, and this landing skid deploys right here. This landing skid on the bottom of that is a pad of wood, like tree wood. And that landing pad is going to touch down, and then it's going to nose down very slowly, about 100 knots, and then it's going to skid to a stop. This thing's skidding to a stop after going to space all by a pad of, we're told, very specialized wood, but that's what's going to give it the friction to stop here on the tarmac. I mean, like, this is one of those things you just got to see to believe. We're seeing it right now, seeing their faces looking back down at Earth. It is a lot to take in, but as you can see, the crowds behind me, they are looking straight up at the sky, and so far so good. Tom?
Yeah, that piece of wood is not a 2x4 from Home Depot, I'm guessing, right? This is stress test and perfected.
No,
but
not
let me
at all.
ask you, nothing against Home Depot. I'm sure they've got great wood that could go to space and come back. Gadi, I'm guessing you would be first on the list to go if they offered you the chance.
Oh my gosh. Do you even know the reaction I had here when I heard that Richard Branson offered you a chance to stow away? Like, if that thing was still on Earth, I would be trying to stow away, being like, look, they said Tom could do it. I should be able to do it too. But yes, absolutely. Sign me up. I'm going to be entering every sweepstakes. When I play the lottery, I play the lottery to try to win a ticket to space. And talking a little bit about Ticket to Space, we've had a chance to speak to the representative here for Space for Humanity. They are an incredible organization. If people are watching and they're like, you know what, we're really excited about space, but this isn't for me. I'm never going to be able to afford it. Space for Humanity is an organization that's dedicated to sending future leaders up into space. You apply, and there is a chance that you'll have this Willy Wonka moment and you'll win a ticket to space, whether it's Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, SpaceX. They're partnering with a lot of these different space organizations. Keisha and Anna are going up because of their partnership with Virgin Galactic. They are choosing the next astronauts as we speak, Tom.
And when's the next flight, Gotti, from there in New Mexico for Virgin Galactic? Do you know when the next one's scheduled?
We don't know exactly when the next one's scheduled, but they are saying that now that this one's going up, this is the first time they're taking a fully commercial payload or passengers up. They want to do these every single month. Then a little bit down the road, they want to do these every single week. So by 2026, they're hoping to have a lot more of these spacecraft, these Unity spacecraft, and they want to have these flights going up every single week. They've got a long list, 800 people. They want that list to grow. And so pretty soon we could start seeing these launches as like, yep, another thing that just happened in the New Mexico sky. I'm going to look up because people are cheering. And it's right
you're getting close. We're getting close towards landing. Wait, let us know when it's coming in. I would say, you know, Branson has always promised big. He promised me 10 years ago, next year we're going to fly 300 people. So you always take it with a grain of salt. He is a great promotional asset for his own company. But he did say in 2019 he wanted to have 50,000 people already as astronauts by 2019. So he wanted 50,000 astronauts by 2019. They're coming a little short of that, as you can see. But nonetheless, here we come with the first 3 civilians who are coming in for a landing now to the New Mexico spaceport. And by the way, Gotti, who's standing there, New Mexico's invested a heck of a lot of money in this idea of the future, of this vision of becoming the spaceport for space tourism.
Absolutely. And, you know, like I am a New Mexican, so a lot of New Mexicans have been skeptical about all of this. This was a pipe dream in the desert.
Let me just tell you, landing gear is down. Landing gear is down. Go ahead.
So that landing gear is down. Yeah, so we were just talking about the New Mexican perspective. A lot of people are excited about all the jobs that you're bringing. But back in the day when this was first announced and there was absolutely nothing in the desert, I remember coming out here with a camera and a tripod and shooting it at the mound of dirt that the spaceport has become. And again, this healthy dose of skepticism, but now seeing the infrastructure, seeing all the aerospace engineering, seeing the hangar.
Here we come. Touchdown, Gotti. Touchdown on the runway.
A spaceship coming in for, well, look at this. This is a sight to behold. And here those two wheels on the back landing gear are deployed and they are touching down.
Gear up for a little bit. That helps bleed off the energy that the spaceship has using the air drag associated with that.
Slowing it down, and you can see. Yep, and you can see that front landing gear. That's a skid. That nose is going to come down, and you've got that wooden pad on it. Here we go.
The nose gear is now down. So
look at that.
At a designated airspeed, the pilots have the option to apply the brakes or not. They can let the vehicle roll to a stop. We have plenty enough runway here. They are applying the brakes today, so.
We have 12,000 feet of runway here at Spaceport America.
Feet of runway and 200 feet wide, so plenty of room.
Let's remind the audience that the commander here is C.J. Sturckow, who's a veteran NASA pilot as well, and Kelly Latimer. Both of them accomplished, and there is the new class of space tourists to fly on the Virgin Galactic ship. Gotti?
Incredible. And yeah, talking about those pilots, we had a chance to talk to Kelly yesterday, and she was talking about her conversations with CJ. This one blew my mind. They were talking about the things that they have to prepare for zero gravity. And CJ tells Kelly, he's like, you know, everything's the same except for you got to aim a little higher when you go for those switches because you don't have gravity pulling you down. So you're going to think you're aiming for a switch with your hand, something that we take for granted, and you're going to have to compensate a little bit. It throws you off just in the beginning, but it's just one of those incredible things where you have to be up there in space to understand all the little details, and yet that goes into their training as well. And as you can see, those 4 people in the back, 2 people in the front, all down on the ground safely, and we are very excited to hear what they have to say.
Professor Levin, can we bring you in quickly? I'm just curious, from your perspective and your expertise, are we now truly looking at a new age for space tourism? And we've been talking about this kind of the storyline for several years, but here we have yet another full spaceship full of space tourists that has made it up to the edge of space and giving them this example, this opportunity, I should say.
Well, I think that we are, and where this goes is going to be interesting to see. I mean, we have seen some space tourists make it all the way to the International Space Station. I think that's really quite incredible. And now we're seeing these parabolic flights breaking out of the Earth's atmosphere. I'm not really sure where the ambition is going to go other than just the thrill ride. And I think that's also going to be interesting to see is how does this become more commercialized besides the thrill ride? And sort of where will it lead when we start to talk about private space stations and maybe private lunar stations? Yeah. And I think the next decades, I mean, there's going to be a lot of changes with colonizing space and with trying to go to Mars, and we'll see how much of that becomes open to regular human beings who aren't military or trained astronauts.
Commander Eileen Collins, she makes a great point. You know, we are now looking at just more than space tourism. Literally, there are plans in the works now to build a floating office park, essentially a research park that is a private business where universities could go up and do research, companies could go up and do biological research, for example, and then also provide people that opportunity if they want to go to this private floating research station business park to pay the money and go up and spend a week. So it seems like we really are on the cusp of this new frontier.
Yeah, Tom, I really think that the primary thing we need to do is get the cost down, because it is very expensive to go to space. And I know that Virgin Galactic, for example, needs to fly well over once a week to really, in the long run, turn a profit. Now, these companies have private investors, and that's a very big key to their success, to keeping them going. And I'm happy to see that we have these big companies that are investing. They see that there is potential in the future. I certainly believe in that potential. And you mentioned the space stations in low Earth orbit. Now, going to orbit is very, very different from what Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin do. Is our astrophysicist mentioned, they're going to space, but they're going up and they're coming down on a relatively short flight. They get a couple of minutes of microgravity. But when you go to orbit, these space stations that you asked about, you need to have much more power, much more propulsion to get up there. And then to come back, you need a heat shield to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. You're coming home at 25 times the speed of sound. And the engineering going to a space station is much more difficult, much more complicated. So we need to see the investment dollars coming. I'm not involved in this myself. I don't invest in space, but I do verbally and educationally try to promote it, because I think it's the future of humanity, is to get people up in space and then eventually away from Earth orbit into Mars and into other parts of the solar system.
Tariq Malik from Space.com. All right, that's a beautiful shot of that spaceship Unity sitting on the tarmac there, on the runway, I should say, out in New Mexico. Tariq, they needed this, right? They needed a big, high-profile success for Virgin Galactic.
Yes, Tom, not just a success, but a success of a new type of flight profile for Virgin Galactic. They've had a series of successful test flights to set the stage for commercial operations, and then a research flight with the Italian Air Force back in May as their first commercial flight, and now their first full-up space tourist passenger flight. And that's really the goal for this company. Sir Richard Branson built it as a passenger space line to fly people to space, much like the very early days of aviation, to fly those first passengers across the oceans and whatnot. Now we take that for granted every day, and their hope as Commander Collins mentioned, is to bring that to space and provide that infrastructure that could set the stage for even higher endeavors.
Let's go back out to our favorite New Mexican, Gadi Schwartz, who calls New Mexico home, although now we have him based in Los Angeles for our benefit. But Gadi, you've got some folks there who have some reaction and have witnessed this firsthand, right?
Yeah, so we were just talking to some family members, in fact, the wife of John, and we asked her, hey, look, you're married to an astronaut now, and she, it was quite a moment where she had a look of realization. The family very excited. One of the sons telling me about the days way back when he was a little kid, they would take him to a picnic, and he remembers one in particular where his dad, John, who has always been a daredevil, had some sort of glider contraption that he had strapped on and was running down a hill and then kept crashing into the trees. And so this need to fly, this need for the freedom of flight has always been something that John has had, and now experiencing zero gravity. We were just talking a little bit, or I heard you talking a little bit about the future of what this looks like, more humans going up into space and what the infrastructure looks like. And it reminds me of some of the conversations that we've had just in the designs of the plane as well as Unity, the spacecraft. And if you notice, the fuselage of all three, the one that goes into space as well as the ones that are here on the mothership, they're all the same. And that's part of this modular design aimed at increasing supply chains, increasing the manufacturing and the assembly line, if you will, for things that can go up into space. So the engineering is something that we saw go from a prototype back in 2003, 2004, to now they're hoping by 2026 to be mass producing at least 6, 7, 8, 9 of these a year, and on and on and on. And so much of that has to do with a big list of high-paying customers at first, with the promise of democratizing space down the way. We've seen that. Other companies have embraced that type of approach, and it's been somewhat successful. So this is something that we may see happen in the future. But again, it's all about these modular designs that can play two different roles, but can exist out where there's zero gravity and no oxygen and withstand entry into Earth's atmosphere. It's incredible. Tom?
It is indeed. So listen, right after Virgin's Richard Branson came back from his mission 2 years ago, I talked to him on the ground there, and he talked about this marking an important milestone for reaching for something that was hopefully within the reach of civilian space tourists. So again, here's a little bit of that interview from 2 years ago on the ground at Spaceport with Richard Branson.
It's important to you that this becomes accessible to everybody.
That's why we started it. I mean, I think ultimately the price will come down to a level where an awful lot of people will be able to do it.
And this has been so long in the making. My last question is, how soon are you going back?
Well, look, I would go back tomorrow. But I don't. I think there's so many people want to go. I won't take a seat up for some time to come now. Let other people have the experience of a lifetime, and we're going to get to work. Our space factories are going to start building many spaceships, so that many people will be able to go to space.
All right. Well, that's to your point, Gadi. They're building many more spaceships. They got to have many more people get up there, but they've got to also they have to make sure that people are willing to pay that kind of money.
Yeah, absolutely willing to pay that kind of money. But again, maybe I watch too many movies, maybe I play too many space video games. Like, the idea of becoming an interplanetary species is something that I think a younger generation wants to see. We see some kids here, and so they're growing up, again, in a time where anyone can be an astronaut, anyone can go up into space. And so this idea, you get up into space, you see how miraculous Earth is, there are civilization enders that are floating around there in space. The idea of, in the next 100,000, 10,000 years, our species going and exploring the rest of space and possibly establishing other places on different planets. this seems like a step in that direction, Tom.
It does indeed. Gotti, thanks. Whenever we need a dose of enthusiasm, we turn to Gotti Schwartz in New Mexico. Great coverage. Thanks, buddy. That concludes this special coverage of the Galactic 2 mission here on NBC News Now. We're going to have much more throughout the day on NBC News Daily and tonight on NBC Nightly News, and we'll be hearing from those on board this mission. I'm Tom Costello. Thank you for watching. On behalf of Gotti, have a great day.